Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before you clap, don't clap at me. I think you need to clap for Galia and her crew that put this dinner on. It was awesome food. Thank you very much. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started. The bathrooms are back there, and the emergency exits are right there and over there. And if your mask flies down from overhead, put it on before you help the others. I feel like a flight attendant while I'm doing that. Let me ask, how many people, is this the first time that they've been to an Independence Town Hall? Oh, a good crowd. Well, welcome, and I hope that we can help answer a bunch of your questions this evening in the talk. My name is Shane Meikle, and I will be your MC for the evening. You only have to see me once more between when they're doing the question and answer. This is entirely funded by donations. So you're going to get the donation bin go by you. If you're able to drop some in there, it's greatly appreciated because it helps us go from to the next town. Our first guest tonight is Mr. Ben Crane. He is a cartoonist, a comedian, and a songwriter. And he will finish up his speech with a song that he has written especially for the independence movement. And if you like that song, which I am sure you will, I encourage you to go to bencrane.com and buy it for 99 cents. I want to see that song hit the charts. And that would be the coolest thing ever if my Alberta roots hits the charts. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mr. Ben Crane, and he will come up and you will enjoy his speech.
Well, thank you so much. That was quite a feed. That was just fantastic. How in the world are you? This is good. I've never been in Smoky Lake, but I know my son-in-law and his father are going to be very proud of me tonight. So, boys, if you're listening, this is for you, because I'm standing in a Ukrainian hall. They love it. Most of you know me as an entertainer and a humorist, someone who sings goofy songs and who don't stay serious all that long. And you're right, for the most part. But those of you who know me better are familiar with the little-known fact that I actually do go deep. And there are times when it is called for, and by golly, this is one of them. My wife, Charmin, and I live on the home section, family home section, with a 150-mile view of the blue Canadian Rockies that I like to sing about. And our grandchildren are sixth generation on that land. Yeah. And my wife, Charm, actually knew, as in spent time with and visited with regularly, her great-granddaddy and great-grandma, who were the ones who bought the original quarter off the original homesteader. So some 115 years ago. So we do have a connection to the land, quite literally. And this is where we get our values from, is stuff like this. They're passed down from generation to generation. We see it every day. We got 2 grandkids, and they go and visit Grammy every afternoon, and they walk home at 6 o'clock at night at supper time across from our house to the other house, across the Great Divide there, the parking lot. And our 5-year-old grandson always takes his 4-year-old sister's hand, and he protects her from vehicles and coyotes and things that go bump in the dark. And he opens the door for her. He's 5 years old. He opens the door for her at their house, lets her in, says, "Ladies first." Values are passed down because they work. So my job here tonight is not to try to convince you with facts, because we've got other panelists who are way smarter than me that are really good at that. I just simply want to let you know the heart of why my values no longer line up with the values of Canada. And that's what I'd like to speak to you tonight about. I want to unpack the 3 slogans that have kind of made the subheading of our movement. You know what they are? Faith, family, freedom. And when you look at these, if you look at these through the eyes of values, instead of just taking the 3 words, it becomes something tangibly appealing, I believe, something to be grasped. So just to be different, I'm going to attack them in reverse. Freedom. Most folks think of freedom as a term of freedom from tyranny and oppression, government overreach, dictatorship, all that ugly stuff. I got to get this out of my way. All that ugly stuff. I'm here till Thursday. All that ugly stuff that controlling folks love to dish out. And simple common sense tells anybody that this is just plain wrong. What if we thought about it, though, in the terms of freedom to? Then opens up another door. Freedom to thrive, not just to survive. Freedom to be what you was built to be. Freedom to run your business the way you know it needs to go. Free from interference and micromanagement by people nowhere near you, who have never heard of you, have no vested interest in you, and quite frankly don't give a flying rip about you. Freedom to associate. Oh, I like that one. That's why we're here tonight. Freedom to hold your own ideas and opinions. And I love this one. Free to fail. Because that's where you learn from your mistakes. I think of a Peanuts cartoon strip that I love. Lucy's bemoaning the fact that someone done something stupid because they ignored common sense and they got hurt, got bonked on the noggin, and now all of a sudden everybody's got to wear a helmet to protect themselves from something that they're not smart enough to think about not doing in the first place. Peanuts' reaction is brilliant. He says, "Stupid should hurt." I think that'll be a t-shirt. But a truly free society will boast the most vibrant and highly successful and highly motivated people in the most vibrant economy, with citizens who breathe life into their community, not suck it out. And we're experiencing an alarming loss of freedoms, you know. Is there any hope? Really? What if we could actually change all of that and take back the freedoms that have been stolen? Family. Family's big to me. The strength of a community, I believe, is directly related to the strength of its families. And family strength relies on and is a direct result of solid values. Seeing a theme here tonight about values. Family is parents passing down values to kids. Family is staying connected with your grandparents and learning from their mistakes and their experiences and their wisdom. Look what 4-H has done. It's been around since for about 113 years, 1913, I believe. Right in its pledge, said before each meeting, even today, it promises to build into the members' life character for the betterment of their club, their community, and their country. That's family values. Family teaches all kinds of values. I think of other-orientedness. When you're stuck with a whole pile of people, you got to think of other people than just yourself. Think of the management of a bathroom Sunday morning or school mornings in a family full of 17 girls.
Way to go, Harv. $100 into the kitty.
Family teaches the value of working together, of cooperation and accomplishing goals with teamwork. The value of getting along with people with differing opinions. Ooh, that doesn't happen, does it? than yourself, hearing them, understanding them, not resorting to calling them names when you lose the argument. Hey, you can always change your friends, but you're stuck with family. Family teaches you so much. Albertans are individual thinkers, by and large, I think. We make our own decisions, and that applies to family. We want to raise our own kids without the government undermining or overriding the values of our family. Choice in education and complete decision-making in healthcare are just two of many examples. Family and faith, freedom. What about faith? This is a fun one. I really like this one. This is the one, to me, with the most hope. I hear folks saying that running a country based on Christian values is shoving religion down someone's throats. I would suggest the contrary. That the concept of forcing anything, ideology or thoughts, is diametrically opposed to Christianity. God himself operates on the basis of free will. In fact, you don't have to be a Jesus follower to appreciate honesty, truth, respect, fairness, and intolerance for stealing or deception, or to appreciate living in peace with your neighbor, or just the idea of your neighbor helping you out in a crisis. These are all Judeo-Christian values that our society has been based on since its inception. And they benefit absolutely everyone, whether you're a Christian or not. It just don't matter at that point. It's all good. It's a win-win. But to the Christian, though, I'll say this. Now, if you're not in this camp, feel free to just tune me out for a second. But I will let you in on a bit of a spoiler alert, because what I'm about to say has incredibly huge benefits to everybody. It's a win-win. So back to the Christian, I want to ask, do you actually fully understand the impact that your personal faith has on your country? There's a verse that I love. God says, if my people who are called by my name will do three things: humble yourselves, seek my face and pray, and turn from the garbage that you're packing that don't line up with me, get rid of that. He says, I will do three things. I will hear. I promise I will hear. That's cool. He says, I promise I'll forgive you. That's even cooler. And he says, wait, there's more. He says, I will heal your land. That is exciting to me. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what the new country of Alberta could look like with a direction like this? Think about it. And the cool thing is all of this would positively benefit even the most devout atheist. How can you go wrong? How you handle your faith will impact your country. To wrap it up, there they are: faith, family, and freedom. These are values that have been time-tested and proven for eons. Entire countries have been based on this. I would think a guy could say just about every country has been based on these kind of values because they work. I've heard the nostalgic concern bemoaning the breakup of a country, and I get it. No divorce is purty. But folks, this country's already broken. It's already broke up. People say Alberta started out history with Canada completely broken. But I disagree. I say we are on the outside on purpose, with intent. And some of the rest of these panelists who are really smart here tonight are going to unpack some of that stuff, show you what we're talking about. Change is literally impossible, I believe. And doing nothing now has become the greater risk. It can be argued that we're not the ones leaving, because we've by and large kind of maintained a steady course forward with the values that we hold very important, while the rest of the country has We've watched it just in the last few years. We've watched it in the last few months, the last few weeks, is veering off into foreign waters. No pun intended, or maybe it was. That Canada that we fondly remember, I believe, is actually closest resembled by Alberta. We have one chance, folks, and it's a rare gift, a precious gift that's been handed to us to reestablish these same time-honored values into a new constitution, a new country, a new future. And the only way to accurately predict your future, if you really want to know, write it. Here's our only chance, folks. Let's grab a pen and start writing.
British did to my Indigenous people using biblical language. Can't hear a word you're saying. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. With all due respect, I feel compelled to say a few things here. What this gentleman spoke, I don't mind what he said. However, it brings old wounds when the British invaded us Indians in Canada here and used priests and the biblical language to take away our lands and abuse our people. So don't bring in God, His Word, in this topic. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
That's a bunch of rubbish. That's a bunch of garbage. You want to be a victim? You choose to be a victim. Don't put your victimhood on us. My great-grandfather was a hereditary chief. My grandmother and her sister went to Indian residential school. They weren't victims. My grandmother educated her children because she went to residential school. I'm a lawyer because she taught my father to read. You take that crap, that garbage, that victim mentality of the Indian, and you take that home, because I don't want to hear it. I've heard that all my life. You want to be a victim, you be a victim. But don't come here and tell us how we stole your land, because that's crap. That's garbage. You know why you think that? Because you're ignorant. You are. You've been fed lies. You're full of lies. Read and learn the truth about your people. You know nothing. You're ignorant. I'm sorry. This pisses me off. I want to hear the native land acknowledgement.
Okay, let's get back to it, boys and girls. This is a song that
Not to waste that. Take your guilt trip. Pack your bags. Okay?
That was unexpected. Sorry for that, guys.
Okay. Let's take a breath. Let's take a deep breath, boys. This is why we're here. Is that there's differing opinions, and that's
Yep.
cool. We can handle that. So I'll carry on with the song that I wrote, and this is one that just kind of came out. It blurbed out, and we thought we'd like to share it with you guys tonight. The band that you're going to hear is not here. It's really in behind the curtain because they're too ugly to look. It was me playing all the instruments, so we recorded this in. This one's called My Alberta Roots Run Deep. Yep. The only life I know goes back 100 years, steeped in deep traditions, blood and sweat and tears. The value of hard work, common sense, and hope and truth, family and freedom, the honest of our fruit. Makes me wanna hold on to what I know is right. In the face of opposition, stand my ground and fight. My Alberta run deep in my blood, in my bones, they get stronger every day. Somebody wants to move in, take it all away. I just grab my draw line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta run deep. It's living on the land, watching life come and go, working hard and playing hard, sunshine and in snow. We don't really ask for much, 'cause we know that God provides, and He's given us all the tools we need to expose this life and thrive. So it makes us wanna hold on to what we know is right. Face of opposition, stand around and fight. Our Alberta roots run deep in our blood, in our bones, they get stronger every day. When somebody tries to move in, tear it all away. One line there in the hand, stand the ground and say, my Alberta roots, you can't hide, they define, made us who we are today, and life is good, it don't run away. Our Alberta roots run deep. You can't pull them out or dig them up. They go deeper every day. And when somebody tries to move in, tear it all away. Draw a line there in the sand, stand the ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep, run deep. Thank you very much. Boy, I sure appreciate that. All right, so the next guy we got coming up to talk to you, what's that? Is Leighton. All right, we're changing things up here just a little bit. I'd like to bring a good friend that I've got to know. He's a good man, he's an Indian, and he loves God, he loves people, he loves Alberta. Ladies and gentlemen, Leighton Grey.
Good evening. Thanks for that great song, Ben. Sorry that got a little hot there, folks. I'm going to try to keep this clean and a family show.
It's Alberta and springs around the corner.
I'm going to say a few things that might upset a few of you. Hopefully, make you think of things in a different way. The gentleman who was here, sir, I apologize for getting upset with you, but I've just been hearing this all my life for so long, right? And I respect that bad things have happened to you, but bad things happening to you is not unique to people who live and have had an experience being a First Nations person. I could tell you stories that I heard from my relatives about bad things that have happened to them. But you know, bad things happen to all of us, don't they? And you know, there was recently a picture in the newspaper, or I guess I shouldn't say newspaper and showing my age, in the media. And there was a man who's an Indian, an actual Indian, Mr. Nenshi. Did you see this? And he was in front of a bunch of guys who were in headdress. And Mr. Nenshi is the same guy who, in December of 2023, he said he called upon the government to act on radicalization of white people. What is radicalization of white people? Well, it means that he wants to change the law to discriminate against white people. Like if you're not Muslim, if you're not First Nation, right? If you're a person of color, then you get a special treatment in this new country of Canada, okay? This new one that everyone here, I expect everyone here, doesn't want. But you know, I want to talk about this whole concept of a First Nation. Let's talk about these good men in their headdresses going over, appearing in front of the legislature with Mr. Nenshi and saying, well, we're going to block a referendum on independence. Let's ask a couple of important questions. Number one, who do these chiefs represent? Do you know? Well, perhaps they represent, presumably, the people from their own communities, right, who made them chief, okay? Now, I'm going to give you some stats. Only about 1% of people in all of Alberta are First Nations people or Aboriginal people. I'm one of them. Only about 1%. Okay, so let's start there. So we've got, even if those chiefs represented every single Aboriginal or First Nations person in Alberta, they would still only represent 1% of Alberta's population. Okay? Now let's break that down a bit further. Because only about 40% of all the First Nations people live on reserves. So even if those chiefs, and there are about a half dozen of them, even if they represented all of the First Nations people in Alberta, which they obviously don't, that would still only be a fraction of 1%. Because more than half, 53%, live off reserve. So what do we have here? We have Mr. Nenshi, who hates white people. And by the way, he hates the Indian too, okay? He hates the First Nations people too. He wants us dead. His government, sir, I'd be happy to talk to you later. I'd love to have a conversation with you. I want to shake your hand, and I want to learn more about you. I really do, but just let me, because I only have 10 minutes, with all due respect, sir. Okay, thank you. So these gentlemen, okay, they get on a plane somehow. And they end up over in jolly old England. And this happens real fast. Did you see this? They're over there talking to the King of England. Now, how many of you, if you wanted to get on a plane and would get an audience with the King? You have any idea how rare that is? You're talking like the Beatles, okay, got to see. I mean, it's really hard to see the King, okay? But in a matter of days, they're over there. And they're asking the King. Now, I told you, they only represent a small, tiny fraction of Albertans, okay? But they go over and they meet with the King and they say that all of the Indigenous peoples of Canada, of Alberta, are being aggrieved or being harmed by this referendum on independence. And they ask the King, by the way, the King who oppressed them. The King who, according to their own story, let's turn it on its head. This is fun, right? Let's turn it inside out. So this is the King that stole their land, signed the treaties, put us in residential school, created a statute of 1876, an apartheid statute called the Indian Act, which should be an embarrassment to this country. Okay? And they're asking the king to help them. This is seriously dysfunctional, isn't it? And why is it dysfunctional? Because the Indian, I'm talking about First Nations peoples, from the very beginning have been used by this government and abused by this government. So I can't understand why our First Nations peoples want to spin this story of oppression and colonialism, which has been given to them by the king. That's who made this stuff up. That's where it came from. So let's talk about First Nations, okay? And this is the great deal that First Nations people, Aboriginal people, are getting from our government, okay? It should be last nations. And I'll tell you why. Last in life expectancy. Last in household income. Last in education. But there are some first. Here's where we're First Nations. Just hear me out, sir, because I'm speaking truth here. This is based upon hard data. First in alcohol and drug abuse. First in prison population. First in homelessness. First in domestic abuse. First in abortion. First in suicide. First in fatherless homes. First in violent crime. First in youth crime. First in child trafficking. First in gang membership. First in unemployment. And most of all, first in government dependency. So here we have these chiefs. They're going over there. They're asking the king to keep all of that going. Why? Why? Why are they doing that? Why? Why is the Indian, why are we addicted to this dependency? Because we have been sold the lie that this gentleman, no, he doesn't know it's a lie because he's been propagandized, no offense, to believe that the First Nations person is a victim. Now, what happens when you see yourself as a victim? You lose agency, right? You believe you have no control over your destiny, right? You lose the ability to think freely. You lose your freedom, okay? You lose the ability to be in community with others, right? How can you be in community with others when you see yourself as a victim? Okay? And most of all, you lose your ability to see yourself as part of a nation, right? So this is my biggest point, and this is the thing that bothers me the most. From the very beginning, this government in Ottawa has created the otherness of the Indian. The Indian is not a person. There's something else. We get a special name. We get a special statute. These people on reserves, they can't even own land. You see what's happening over in British Columbia, right? And they sell the story, the media sells the story, oh, all this land in Vancouver and out in Richmond, in Cowichan, oh, that's being given over to the Indians. It's a lie. In the Indian Act, it says the Indian cannot own land in Canada. So who owns the land? Who gets the land? The land is going to go supposedly to the Indian under something that the Supreme Court of Canada invented in 1997 called Aboriginal title. But who's going to own the land? The Crown. So what is this? This is a land grab. You see? And here's the worst part, okay? It's the Indian, it's those chiefs. They're taking all the flack. They're taking all the bullets. What are these Indian chiefs doing over there? They don't speak for me. I'm an Albertan. But it's not them, right? They're fodder. They're the guys up in the front taking all the bullets for the guys who are the real baddies, right? So how does this tie into independence? Well, if we know, and we should know based on what I've said, that the relationship between the federal government and First Nations and Aboriginal peoples is seriously dysfunctional. And we can know that because that's a fact. This gentleman, he even said it. He knows it's dysfunctional. We agree on that. We might not agree on everything, but we know that the federal government is an abuser, right? We agree? Absolutely. He says he's been harmed. I believe you, sir. I'm saddened that you were injured and that you're in pain. I am. But if we really care about people like this gentleman here, are we going to import into the new Alberta this system of apartheid, this system of abuse, the system that makes the First Nations peoples actually the last people in society? I don't think anybody here wants that. I don't even have to ask you to raise your hands and show me that you want something better for Aboriginal people in Alberta. Yeah. So, here's where I'll finish off before I introduce our next speaker. We have a once in a lifetime, maybe once in a century opportunity here with Alberta independence. This government that we have is evil. They want to take everything away from you. What you're seeing happening in BC is an experiment, and they're coming here next, okay? They just passed Bill C-9, which is going to make a lot of the things that I said here tonight criminal. Under Bill C-9, I could be arrested for saying the things I've said tonight because they could deem it hate speech. Okay? So, we have this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So, let's create a good nation, a nation that honors all of our people, that doesn't segregate the First Nations peoples, like this gentleman here, okay? That treats everyone with dignity and fairness and kindness, where everyone is equal before the law. No one is above the law, but also no one is below the law. You know, people don't understand this about the rule of law. They think what rule of law means, well, nobody's above the law. It also means nobody's below the law. So that, for example, when a gentleman goes to, I shouldn't call him a gentleman, a man, a black man goes to court recently because he's killed his white girlfriend, and he gets a better sentence because he's black and she's white. That's not the rule of law. That's the opposite of the rule of law. Nor should First Nations peoples expect to get special treatment from the court, or transgender people. That's not the rule of law. Everybody has to be equal before the law. And we have to have a society, if we're going to have a society that's governed by the rule of law, we have to have a society where we live by the law, but we're not ruled by law, so that the government can make up any law it wants and we just have to blindly obey it, which is what Canada is becoming. So let's create a society where it's not like that, where we create just laws that make sense, where all people are treated equally before the law, especially gentlemen like this man here, the Indian. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I want to talk to you.
The fact is,
Here, you want to come and have the mic?
this gentleman touched on a lot of good points here. The fact is, there's a new thing coming, it's called neo-colonization, where you white folks will be put from the foreign people in Canada here into a reserve. And that's coming. So this coming, all due respect and without prejudice, that's the facts.
Now I'll introduce the next guy. Are we having fun tonight? Oh, it's good. You know, I do appreciate this. I really do. This feller that's coming up here is one of them smart guys I was telling you about. Well, any of them is smarter than me, but Dr. Michael Wagner has a doctorate in political science, and he understands stuff that I have never dreamed about, and he's become a good friend, and he's also a contributor, regular contributor with Western Standard. Would you welcome, please, Michael Wagner.
Thank you, Ben, for that kind introduction. So what I want to talk about tonight is to say that Alberta independence is the best way to preserve what was best about Canada. Now, Canada was once a great country. For its first 100 years or so, Canada was known for exceptional national projects. We built a railway across the northern part of the continent. We built a country out of a rough and cold wilderness. We turned the wilderness into a prosperous and vibrant community. And our military was known for its effectiveness around the world. But since the 1960s, Canada has changed. Liberal leaders decided to remake Canada into a different kind of country, one that prioritized leftist social engineering over the country's historic identity and achievements. Now, there were Canadians who realized what was going on and criticized what the Liberals were doing, and one of the best critics, in my view, was Ted Byfield, the founder of Alberta Report magazine. And Ted Byfield actually grew up in Toronto, and he came out west and became a fiery Alberta patriot because he loved our province. No, Ted Byfield actually, as he grew up in Toronto, like he wrote about how when he was growing up in the 1930s and 40s, you know, our flag then at the time was the Union Jack, or at least the red ensign with Union Jack in the upper corner. And the Union Jack actually consists of 3 crosses. The Cross of St. George from England, the Cross of St. Andrew from Scotland, and the Cross of St. Patrick from Ireland. So in a sense, the Union Jack has an explicitly Christian identity to it. And this is the kind of the background to the Christian identity that Canada had. But of course, in 1965, Prime Minister Lester Pearson changed our flag. He changed it to the current flag with the maple leaf. So the maple leaf is the leaf from the sugar maple tree, which does not grow in Western Canada. So the flag that represents our country doesn't represent this part of the country. Now, as the Liberal government was, weakening our national identity, people will still want to identify with something. So instead of identifying with their nation, the whole nation, they identify with their region or their province. And people have criticized Canadians for being too closely identified with their region or their province. But this is the result of the national government itself attacking our national identity. Something that's important about this is that some Albertans have been criticized. Those of us who support independence have sometimes been criticized for being disloyal to Canada, but we're not being disloyal to Canada. Many of us who support independence are those who remember and deeply love the Canada that existed before the Liberals wrecked it. We do love that Canada, that historic Canada. Even by 1980, Ted Byfield was writing about how 2 Canadas were emerging. Prime Minister Trudeau in 1980 had been Prime Minister by that time for 12 years. There was 2 Canadas, the old Canada and the new Canada. The old Canada was founded essentially, in a sense, by John A. Macdonald, who gave us a constitution in 1867. And the new Canada was being founded by Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who gave us a new constitution in 1982. So you've got 2 prime ministers, 2 constitutions, and 2 essentially different countries. Now, there were certain practical outworkings of these 2 different Canadas, old Canada and new Canada, and I want to quote from Ted Byfield what he said about these 2 countries. Old Canada had some harsh laws, but was safe to live in. New Canada has enlightened, lenient laws and is increasingly unsafe to live in. Old Canada was generally committed to the free enterprise system, modified where necessary. New Canada is increasingly committed to the socialist system, magnified where unnecessary. Old Canada met its military obligations, in fact served magnificently in 2 world wars. New Canada has virtually no army and has reneged on its military obligations. Old Canada was frugal and poor but paid its way. New Canada runs at a $14 billion deficit. Now, that $14 billion is $1980, so it would be much larger by today's standards. But these are 2 very different countries. And so the question arises as to which of those countries is worthy of our support. And at this point, Ted Byfield writes, when people put the question, are you loyal to Canada, I have to ask, to which Canada? The one we used to know, or the one which Mr. Trudeau is forcing upon us? I certainly felt part of the first, but that country doesn't seem to be there anymore. About the second, I have grave doubts. So it was not a question of being disloyal to Canada. It was a question of determining which Canada to be loyal to. Now, our national identity was constantly under assault from Pierre Trudeau. And to be loyal to Trudeau's new Canada was to be disloyal to the old Canada, the original Canada. Pierre Trudeau transformed Canada into a different kind of country, one that is no longer recognizable to many of us. So how did Trudeau fundamentally transform the country? He didn't like the Canada as it was, and he wanted to fundamentally transform it. So if you want to transform a country, you change its constitution. The simplest way to change a country comprehensively is to change its constitution, because the constitution is the foundational document of a country that establishes the various governments and assigns the citizens their responsibilities and rights. So when you change the constitution, you change the country, and that is something that Pierre Trudeau understood very, very well. So when he was Justice Minister in 1968, he first brought forth his proposal for a constitutionally entrenched Charter of Rights, and his proposal was published by the federal government. So in this document, Pierre Trudeau told us that without guaranteed rights written into the Constitution, we don't actually have rights. But this is a problem because Canada has historically followed the British system of protection of rights through a common law system. So our rights were not explicitly written into the Constitution. Like the Americans had the Bill of Rights, where the rights are explicitly written into the Constitution. That's one way of protecting rights. Canada and Britain had followed a different way, where they weren't explicitly written into the Constitution. And Trudeau said, if we don't write them into the Constitution, we don't have those rights. But if you think back, though, like in 1968 when he made this proposal, there was no country in the world that had better protection for individual rights than Canada. Like there were other countries that had equivalent protection of rights, say like Australia or something, but there was no country with a better protection of rights than Canada. So when Trudeau was telling us we don't have rights, we need to get them written into the Constitution, he was actually deceiving us as far as I'm concerned. But it was an easy sell for his part, because when you ask people, don't you want your rights written in the Constitution? They'll say, yeah, I do. You know, most people will. So it was an easy sell for Trudeau to say, hey, we got to put your rights into the Constitution. So Trudeau was able to convince most Canadians that we should put the Charter of Rights into the Constitution, and he got that. So in 1982, we got the Charter of Rights officially adopted. But there was 3 years before the Charter of Rights came fully into effect, because it was known that there was many laws at the provincial and federal level that would conflict with the Charter. So the federal and provincial governments were given 3 years to change their laws, to bring them into conformity with the Charter before it came into effect. So the Charter of Rights came fully into effect in 1985. Now in 1985, our Justice Minister was John Crosbie. You might remember the Brian Mulroney government. He was the Justice Minister in the Brian Mulroney government. And this is what John Crosbie, our Justice Minister, said as the Charter of Rights was about to take full effect into Canadian law. The public does not realize that we already have had a revolution in Canadian society. The adoption of a charter was a revolution. It has changed the whole power structure of Canadian society. It has taken tremendous power from governments and given it to the courts of Canada, the Supreme Court of Canada, which is not widely realized. Therefore, we are in a whole new legal environment in Canada. There has been a revolutionary change. The Justice Minister said the adoption of the Charter was a revolutionary change in Canada. So over the next few years, he was right, over the next few years, many, many laws and policies in Canada and at provincial level were struck down by the Supreme Court because of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, because of this revolutionary change. So what the Charter delivered to Canada was a fundamental restructuring of our country. That was the revolutionary change. Now, Dr. William Gardner in 1994, he wrote that the Charter was, quote, an entire state enterprise for the reshaping of Canada. He went on to say that Pierre Trudeau viewed the Constitution, quote, as a means to the achievement of some ideal state, an instrument for forcing society into a predetermined social and political mold. And this is exactly what Pierre Trudeau achieved. With his so-called Charter of Rights, he essentially refounded Canada as a different country, one that fit his ideological program. Each and every day, courts across Canada enforce Pierre Trudeau's vision of Canada using his Charter of Rights. In this sense, Pierre Trudeau rules Canada from the grave. He is dead but not gone. His ideology continues to shape our country and will continue to do so thanks to the Charter. And I have a really good recent example of that. This is a column from the National Post from January 29th, 2026. So this is just from a few weeks ago. It's a column by Ted Morton. Now, Ted Morton was for several decades a political scientist at the University of Calgary, and then he became a cabinet minister in Alberta. So this column is called "The Charter is Gutting the Provinces, and the Data Proves It." It's based upon a study from the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. So what this means is, Pierre Trudeau got his charter adopted, and every year, the provinces adopt certain laws, and many of them are challenged, and they go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will often strike down provincial laws. So year after year, our provinces are losing more and more power over every year, losing more and more power. So the provincial powers are being restricted over time. And this is the implementation of Pierre Trudeau's ideology. Like, he's been dead for 25 years. He's been dead for 25 years, and yet the Supreme Court is still enforcing his ideology using the Charter itself. Now, besides changing our Constitution, the Trudeaus, both Pierre and Justin, wanted to change our national identity. They didn't like Canada's historical national identity, so what did they want? Well, in 2015, shortly after Justin Trudeau was elected as Prime Minister, he gave an interview to the New York Times, and he told the New York Times that Canada has no core identity. He told the New York Times that Canada is the first post-national state. And the New York Times accurately said that in saying these things, Justin Trudeau was the avatar of his father's vision. Justin Trudeau was fulfilling his father's vision in eliminating our national identity. So instead of our historical identity that Canada had, they wanted to replace that historical identity with abstract universal concepts. Instead of a national identity, we have abstract universal concepts. Diversity, tolerance, inclusivity. This is the liberal version of what Canada should be. Not our historic national identity, but our post-national status with universal abstract concepts. But many of us still remember the old Canada and what it meant. We want our country back. That is why we support Alberta independence. Good old Canada has vanished. Good old Canada has vanished. In its place, we have new Trudeau Canada, which reeks of wokeism, socialism, and an emerging police state. But an independent Alberta can and will uphold the noble traditions and freedoms of the original Canadian dream. Thank you. Pardon me? Can we start our own dream? Yeah, for sure. As a new country, we can start many new good things. Okay. Anyway, it's my privilege now to introduce the next speaker, Kathy Flett. I first met Kathy a number of years ago at another independence meeting, and in that time since, she's emerged as one of the main independent speakers around the province, and she does a wonderful job, and I'd just like to welcome and introduce Kathy Flett.
We desire, every patriotic Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairie shall go to enrich our own people in the East, to build up the factories and the workshops in Eastern Canada and contribute in every way to its prosperity. Those words were spoken in 1904, the year before we became a province, by the Honourable Sir Clifford Sifton. That is what this province was built on, was created on. That was the foundation. What many people don't know, and I didn't either, is that Alberta and Saskatchewan are the only two provinces within this confederation that were literally colonized. There were no negotiations, no conversations, no board meetings, no nothing. In fact, we were even appointed our first premier. We didn't even get to elect that guy. And he was a liberal. Shocker. The more things change, the more they stay the same. As it stands now, all of these years later, and we're talking about independence, when you look at how the federal portion of our government is structured, you see that there are 2 times as many MPs in the East as we have in the West. There are 2 times as many senators in the East as we have in the West. Now, we're told this is representation by population. It's cold over there, figure it out. Right? Or is it? It really is. The math don't math, does it? What time did they call the last federal election? Does anybody remember? 8:09. What time do our polls close? 8 p.m. Even if you voted for the winner, and be careful of the company you're in if you're going to admit to that. Even if you did, your vote was not required to make it happen. It still didn't count. Our votes don't count. Now, knowing that, and then on top of that, our senators are all appointed, right? We don't vote our senators in. We try in Alberta, it's taken as a suggestion, but all the senators are appointed. All right now, but a handful are literally Trudeau appointees. So even if We had a federal conservative government knowing that every bill that goes through has to go through both houses, has to be voted on both MPs and senators. Would it matter? No. You see, the system we have is not broken. It's actually working exactly as it's designed. Exactly as it's designed. And we have a problem with that. We've always had a problem with that. And now we're really, really talking about it with probably much more, I don't know, chutzpah than we've ever had before. And they try to tell us, well, it's all about pipelines. It's all about pipelines. Well, okay, let's talk about pipelines for a second. Energy East, remember that? Socially unacceptable. Keep your oil in the ground. We don't want it. Course not. So it got shut down. That wasn't us that did that. That was the East that did that. Northern Gateway, we're like, fine, we'll go the other way. Northern Gateway. Oh, no, you don't. You're not doing that either. And now we are on the brink of a world shortage because of a war that we have nothing to do with, and we can't help anybody because we can't get our product to market because of Ottawa, not us. Oh, but we bought you a pipeline. Come on, Kathy, don't be so ungrateful. You've got Trans Mountain. If people actually dug into the truth of Trans Mountain, they'd realize that what it should be is a national embarrassment. A national embarrassment. So is this about pipelines? Yes, but it's not always about the money. It's the principle behind it. Where does the East get most of their oil and gas from? Elbows up. Right? Aren't we supposed to be our own best customer? Nope, not if you're in the West. Okay, let's talk taxes. Equalization. I honestly didn't even know this was a thing until about 7.5, 8 years ago. I'm wishing I still didn't. It was Harper that changed it to include 50% of our resource revenues but exclude Quebec's. That is why when we are in a recession, we still pay in while the East still gets. That's not right. That's not fair. We had a referendum on that a little while ago, remember? And nothing came of it because Ottawa does not care. National debt. We'll take on the debt so you don't have to. Remember that? How's that working out? How's your food prices? How are your gas prices? Now you're taking on the debt. I love this new one this week. Have you noticed this? The home equity tax that's getting floated out there. So not only do you get to pay property taxes municipally, you may get to pay an equity tax every year to the federal government on your home that you supposedly own. This is not okay. Well, let's talk morality. 17% of Canadians feel safe now, according to the local polls. Let me ask you a question. How many of you remember leaving your keys inside your unlocked vehicle in front of your unlocked house while you went to bed for the night because you didn't want to lose your keys and you didn't know where your house key was? Right? Right? Like, we need to get back to that, but we can't. This isn't our fault. This is not our fault that this is where we're at right now. Human trafficking has skyrocketed. Those are not our values. That is not our values. And this one absolutely makes my blood boil, and it will yours too. Now, the judges in this country, when they're considering sentences that they're going to give to pedophiles, they take into account how their decision might affect that person's immigration status. We live in a country that refuses to protect our children, and we don't have the votes in Parliament or in the Senate, for that matter, to fix it. So we've been exploring our options. We're done with this nonsense. We've been exploring our options, and the response from the rest of Canada has been a little disappointing, to say the least. It began with us being screamed at and them saying, "You can't leave." Yeah, we can. Thanks, Quebec. Yeah, we can. And we're thinking hard about it. When that didn't work anymore, they turned tactics. Do you know what you'll be giving up? Well, I made a list. Tell me what you think. This is what we'll be giving up. Living under a government that delights in stifling our growth, causes numerous politically induced recessions, landlocks us through policy, regulates everything possible because that's the next best thing to nationalizing it, steals our money through taxation, and then launders it to benefit themselves and their friends. They believe in open borders so just anybody can walk in, and they do. They unbelievable levels of Chinese interference in our political system while we're making deals with the Chinese. Extortion being carried out by Indian gangs here in our borders, including Alberta, while we're making deals with India. And now apparently we got drug cartels from Mexico as well, all of which continues to destroy our relationships with our largest trading partner to the south, of course, the US. We've got censorship laws that were just passed, gun buyback programs, and a Supreme Court who just ruled that invoking the Emergencies Act was indeed unconstitutional, and the response from Ottawa was, oops. That's what we're leaving. But guess what we'll be gaining? Because we're no longer under the Canada Health Act, we're going to finally have state-of-the-art health care without wait times. In fact, rather than traveling to other countries, people will probably start coming here. We could be a healthcare destination and help people around the globe get the care that they need. Our pension plans, that's a big one. By bringing it home, that program will be at the local level. We will be in control. It won't be Ottawa or anybody else deciding where that money is going to be invested. And furthermore, if you pass before you've collected it all, can't it just go into your estate? It's your money instead of into the ether. And speaking of the ether and social programs that some people are worried that we might lose, EI, let's go back to calling it UI. It's unemployment insurance. You don't need insurance when you have a job. You need it when you don't. But anyways, how many of you in here have paid into it almost all your lives, or maybe all your lives, and never collected a dime or very little? How many of you know that the East has to work half as much as you to get it back? Right? So here's an idea. We could still have that program. I think it's a great program. And whatever you do not need during your whole career, roll it into your pension. It's your money. It is not for the government to just steal and take for themselves. Furthermore, we can pass that through too with the criminal code of our own. Speaking of money that they like to launder, politicians do, we could have a criminal code that says, hey, if you do this, guess what? I don't care if we voted you in or not. You're going to jail. That's what we could do. On top of that, we could have a police force that will actually do that. And judges that will actually find them guilty. And crime will reduce dramatically. We'll be in charge of our own immigration. No more worrying about who is here, and we probably don't know whether they're here or not, or if they should be. Capital goes where capital is welcome. Alberta will be open for business. Our city centers are going to be vibrant again, and our small towns, Smoky Lake, will come back to life. That's what's going to happen. No more Ottawa dictating what we can and cannot do. You want to buy an EV? I want you to buy an EV. Please do. You want to buy a diesel? I hope you do, because somebody's going to have to go rescue the EV in the wintertime. You want solar? I want you to have solar. You can pay for it yourself. No more government subsidies. No more. And no more cartels that they call supply management. Free markets, safe street, work-life balance, a solid future. And how about this? Schools that focus on giving our children a real education rather than trying to use them as little social justice warriors and convincing them there's something or someone they're not. The list goes on and on and on. There's way more good to us going this route. We know Canada's a sinking ship. We don't have the votes to fix it. We can't. And we don't have to go down with it. We have everything we need, especially the people to get the job done. It's in our bones. We're trailblazers. This is what we do. It's what built this province. And so it's time to blaze a new trail of our own. And it's time to become the sovereign republic of Alberta. I think we're going to get to the Q&A section, and then we'll answer that question. Yeah, absolutely, because it's a good one. It's a very good one. Well, it has been a very informative and exciting evening tonight, and I thank you guys all for coming. The reason that we're all here is because of our next speaker, Chris Scott. You may have heard his name rolling around a few years ago. when he became a local hero, standing up in the middle of all of the mandates that, well, I don't know, everywhere I go, I seem to run into people who they somehow survived COVID, but it was the mandates that did the damage. And we're all here together today, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chris Scott.
Well, thank you very much. Is everybody all fed up? I'm talking about with Ottawa, actually. Okay. Thank you all for coming. It's great to see so many people raise their hand when we ask how many people, is this their first time at a meeting like this? That's the whole point of these meetings, is to get people who would not otherwise come out to listen to speeches like this, maybe not come out to things like this and ask questions or make statements, to come out and have a discussion. And sometimes, yes, we have to lure you in with pierogies and sausage, but it worked, right? In October of this year, Albertans are going to be asked a very heavy question, a very important question. And this question is going to affect the futures of our kids and our grandchildren and their kids and grandchildren and on and on and on. The gravity of the situation is, as a good friend of mine once said, he said, "This is heavy, Doc." You know that? Great Scott, Marty, Back to the Future. Sorry, I tried. It's a very heavy question. And in my short 46 years on this planet, I've learned if I'm going to take a test or answer a question, and it's really important, I really need to study. I need to know the facts. I need to know why this question is there. And the reason being is, if I don't know those things, I can't answer the question to the best of my ability for the best outcome, right? We have elections in Alberta, and people ask us to put our trust in them so they can go to the legislature and be our voice, right? That's a pretty heavy choice as well. If we're going to elect somebody to represent, 50 or 60 or 100,000 voices, we really better know who that person is and what they're about, because we want to make sure that our voices and our values make it into that legislature. Because in that legislature, where those discussions happen, much like we're discussing tonight, that's where our futures are affected. How much more important is it if we're going to ask a question on the sovereignty of Alberta? Whether or not Alberta is going to continue with the status quo, doing the same thing we've done for 120 years, not being able to influence our outcome under federal policy, because, as Kathy mentioned, the polls close at 8 o'clock, the election's called at 8:09, and we're left wondering if we actually matter. We're going to choose whether we continue with that. The signatories to some very important treaties are going to choose if they're going to continue with that arrangement, with the status quo, under some of the statistics that my brother Leighton mentioned earlier, or are we going to do something new together? Something that's never been done before in this country. And that something is one of the most important discussions. The thing we're going to do that has never been done is a discussion where we decide how the government is going to act. That's called the Constitution. For the first time in Canadian history, Albertans, Canadians, we've never done it. We have an opportunity to do that. And I'll tell you, if you crack a few history books, you're going to find out that some peoples, the price they had to pay for the opportunity that we're going to have in October was way worse than anything we'll ever face in our life. Some countries, some regions have spent hundreds of years fighting bloody wars for the opportunity that we're about to get. And that's the beautiful thing about Canada, is that we're free to have those discussions and take control of our future in that way. Because at the very least, this country believes in the will of the people, or so it should. So we get to decide, are we going to keep things the same on the trajectory that we're on right now, operating in a managed decline where our politicians put on smiling faces and tell us that everything is great, while we feel, every time we go to buy something, we feel like, no, this isn't right. We look at our grocery cart in the superstore or wherever, and we think, oh yeah, this should cost us about $100. We get to the checkout and it's $500. You know, we feel something's wrong. We go to buy a new car, and they want us to pay $100,000 for a car that we could have bought 15 years ago for $35,000. Something's wrong. But our politicians, they tell us everything's great. The ways are quite sunny. They're smiling. They're telling us about our fantastic GDP growth and other things. Deals they're making with China where our farmers are going to ship canola seed over. They don't mention that China's going to process it, send it back, and charge us double. They don't mention that the GDP numbers they're talking about that seem so fantastic on paper, and when CBC has some political pundit or economist on there praising Mark Carney, they don't tell you that those GDP numbers include hundreds of millions and billions of dollars of bureaucratic bloat and waste. Did you know that every time a politician takes a paycheck, or we give people some entitlement, or perhaps we help people who are fleeing transphobia in wherever by bringing them to Canada and then giving them money to settle here, that's included in our GDP growth. Did you know that? The economic activity of the parasitic draw in this country, and when I say parasitic draws, I'm talking about people who live and exist off of the value you create. You go to work, you earn money, you pay taxes, those taxes pay those people. It's not a new value creation. They don't tell you that. They just tell you that our GDP grew by 4% last year. They fail to mention it's because we hired 200,000 bureaucrats and included the numbers. These are the things that we have to start thinking about. These are the issues that we have to start digging into before we're going to answer a question as heavy as is going to be presented to us in October. And that's why we're here tonight. That's why I decided that instead of being along for the ride on my couch watching this unfold in front of me, I was going to, without telling them, voluntold a whole group of people to do 200 or 300 events over a period of 5 months. Right, Shane? That's why we're doing this. We need to start talking. We need to stop with the idea that anytime there's an opposing view that it has to be canceled. Right now, you're canceling me with your clapping. Just kidding. Right now, there's a group of Albertans engaged in direct democracy, and they are working their butts off to make sure that Albertans have an opportunity to compel the government to ask a question. It's called a petition, right? That is the most basic form of democracy you can have. The people exercising their will, doing the work of their own free will, and compelling government to do something. There are other people, and I saw another video today, I've seen dozens of these things on social media, where a man goes up to one of these people and he starts cursing at them and calling them stupid and saying, you Albertans are all stupid. You're stupid. If you want to change things, stop electing governments that don't represent you. All you ever do is you vote for conservative governments and then you complain when you don't get what you want. And I'm like, did I miss something here? As a Western Canadian, I am 100% completely alive to the fact that it doesn't matter what Western Canada really wants. It doesn't matter if we all elect whatever brand of government that we want. The election's called at 8:09. And this is a very serious problem. If you live in a region or a nation or anywhere, a province, where you cannot influence the outcome of your future by engaging in democracy, and instead you're canceled before it even happens, that is not democracy, and you need to do something about it. If you live in a country where you're scared to put your pen to paper and write your name and be counted as an Albertan who wants to compel the government to ask a question, if you're scared to do that because you believe that your government is going to persecute you for it, freeze your bank account, or otherwise harm you, you need to sign that paper. Have any of you Have any of you in your lifetime been worried that you're going to get fined or go to jail for going to church? I have. Have any of you been worried that if you protest the bad policy and decisions that your government is making, that you'll end up in jail? I have. I went to jail for that. I went to jail for the crime of protesting. Have any of you been worried as a Canadian that if you gather for political purpose to express your charter right with your peers, that you might be fined or jailed? I have. When I went through all those things, when I had those epiphanies and realized my rights aren't as inalienable as I thought, as a matter of fact, they're worth exactly what that thing in the box back there, the printed toilet paper thing is. When I had that epiphany, I started to think, how do we fix this? How do we change it? And as I peeled back that onion and I had that conversation with hundreds of people, I realized there really is no way, because this is exactly how it's supposed to be. So if we want to change this thing, if we want to change the situation, we need to rewrite the rules completely. Not that the rules are all bad. It's not all bad. There's lots of good things in our Constitution. There's lots of, I would say that the spirit of the Constitution and the spirit of the Charter Rights and Freedoms, if taken at face value, are largely good. Unfortunately, the way it's done has not turned out that way. And now we can be arrested for going to church and arrested for protesting. And now that Bill C-9, I guess, has passed, we can be arrested for doing things like preaching the gospel, because some people consider the Bible a hate symbol. And if it offends somebody, much like in the UK, now somebody can come to you and charge you with that. This isn't made up. This isn't a conspiracy. It's right here on our doorstep. It's actually here. And 5 years ago, people like me and Leighton and Shane and others, we said that these things were coming. And people said, no, you're a quack. That'll never happen. This is Canada. We're free. We're always going to be free. Well, look where we are now. But thank God that we have a legal, lawful pathway to rewrite the rules to the benefit of everybody. That's what this question in October is about. It's not about hating Canada. It's not about disrespecting treaties. It's not about, wanting to run away. It's the realization that for the first time in Canadian history, Alberta is the province that has the opportunity to do what we're supposed to do in the first place, and that is exercise the will of the people and compel the government to act the way we want them to, not the other way around. And I am very hopeful, because as we travel the province and do these meetings, I think we've done 8 or something now, and probably another 4 or 5 dozen with other groups over the years, I see rooms filling up with new people. People who are hungry for information. They want answers. Some people come here because they have opposition to this. And they have points that they want to ask about that they believe are detrimental, like why we shouldn't do this. And that's fantastic. We can work through those things together. And as we go into the question and answer period very shortly here, because I'm already over time, I can see Shane dancing like he has to pee back there. As we go into the question and answer period, I want to ask you, plead with you, please be bold. Be bold, but be polite. Ask your question no matter if you think it's going to offend me. If you have a point that you want to make about why you believe Alberta should not pursue sovereignty, I would love to hear it. And I want to give you my answer. But I'm going to warn you. So far, there hasn't been one opposing idea, opposing view that's been presented to me that I haven't been able to turn around and explain why that is actually a reason we need to be independent. So be bold, be polite, please. Be mindful of everyone's time. We're running a little bit late, so we want to try and get through as many of the questions as we can. If you don't get the answer you want, we will stick around for a little while after, and you're welcome to come visit us, and we'll have that conversation face-to-face, intimately, the way that human beings do, before we started cancel culture. And together, we can make sure that come October, we have gathered unto ourselves the knowledge and wisdom we need to make the best decision going forward, not only for us, not only for our families, but for every Albertan. Thank you very much.
So we'll take a 5-minute break while the speakers come up and get ready. Then Arvie is going to stand here with the microphone. He is not going to give anybody the microphone. He will hold it, and you can ask your question. I ask, please, that you do not pontificate. Ask your question, because we want as many people as possible to be able to ask their questions. So in 5 minutes, we'll get started with the question and answer. Thank you. watching everybody in here. No, RV. RV's got the mic. You got to line up behind RV. We just need Leighton and Chris.
Ask the first question, we'll answer it.
Yeah, I turned it back on.
One question each, right?
One question each. No statements. No statements. You can ask one question, and then you can go to the back of the line and come up.
And I'm done answering. Okay. You can sing your answers.
Okay, I think we're ready to roll now. We got the microphones. Okay, I'll hold it for you.
I just have a question. What's to stop, once we do get separation or independence, what's to stop the politicians that we get in place from screwing us again?
Constitution. That's it.
No, there's more.
Well, there is a little more. So the way that you prevent government from becoming what they are is you make sure that your constitution.
Excuse me, could we just thank you very much.
Anyway, we make sure that document takes all of the best things from all the best constitutions around the world, and we learn what didn't work, what does work, and we build something great with the benefit of hindsight. That's my opinion. And we stay involved in the process, unlike what we've done largely over the last few decades, which is sit at home and let everybody else do the things for us. We got to keep involved.
That's what I was going to say.
You're going to hold it?
There's a great answer to this book, or to this question, in Michael's book, Michael Wagner. He's got a book over there called Leaving God Behind. And it explains how, and he did it in his speech, he gave you a bit of a brief synopsis of that story, and that is how our country has fundamentally changed. He said he was quoting Mr. Crosby, he said it was a revolution, and that's what's happened. There's a great quotation here I'll just share with you. This is from a man named G.K. Chesterton. If you don't know who that is, you should Google him. He wrote a book 100 years ago called The Everlasting Man. He was a mystery writer, but he wrote a lot of Christian stuff, and he said this. He says, "The more I consider Christianity, the more I found that while it had established a rule and order, the chief aim of that order was to give room for good things to run wild and grow." So that's the answer to the question, right? Foundationally, if you have a good society, good things will grow from that. It's just like soil, right? The soil that many of you who are farmers, you know how important that soil is. You can't grow good things in bad soil. So the part of what we need to do with Alberta independence is we have to lay some good soil so good things will grow.
So I have a question. All these inequities that we've been passed down from Ottawa, and there's a whole bunch of them, I heard a lot of them tonight. Why haven't our current and previous politicians in Alberta done something about it?
Because they can't. Exactly. Or they won't.
Well, and it depends which level of government you're talking about, right? If you're talking about the federal government, we've actually tried. We had the Reform Party, right? That was our first real kick at the can, if you will, with Preston Manning. And we discovered, well, that's not enough. Wasn't going to work. So then back to the drawing board, we had Stephen Harper in, and now the West was in, right? I mean, man, goodness, weren't we ever celebrating? That was a great day, or so we thought. But we found out that that didn't matter either, Because as I mentioned, he's the one that screwed over us on that equalization formula to appease the East, right? Things got so crazy when he was prime minister, he had to prorogue parliament 3 times just to keep control of the whole thing. So federally, we can't. We are so outnumbered, it's impossible, it doesn't matter. Provincially, now that's another matter entirely. I did a little study one time, and I charted all of our rather strong premiers that we've had over the decades, and every time we get a strong premier who's doing really good for us, the Conservatives seem to come and want to squash that, because a strong Alberta isn't good for them either, politically. So this is why, like, we're in a no-win situation at the end of the day.
Just before we go to the next question, my friend Ben Trudeau, one of the only good Trudeaus I know, he wrote a book called Enough, and I would encourage you, if you want to know more about that, why our governments aren't doing those things, get that book. It's on Amazon, well worth it, and that explains that in great detail.
Yeah, it's a great book. Really good.
So I would imagine that there's a structure of a political party coming forward if we get independence, right? Have we considered, instead of politicians, maybe a board of governors, or like a cooperative where you have directors and managers that are held accountable, reviewed every 6 months and so on and so forth? And hey, if you're not doing the job and representing your people, you're out of a job and we hire somebody else. Has that been looked at?
That's a really good question. In fact, in the Alberta Prosperity Project policy, this is something that was looked at closely, because you're quite right. Party politics, that's a huge part of the problem, right? And one of the things that APP looked at is the idea of actually banning political parties. And the idea was that so that if somebody, say from Smoky Lake community, is elected to represent them, that they will actually represent the interests of the people who elected them, versus going along with the party. It would also prevent abuses like what we're seeing with the fake majority that Carney has put together, by drawing people who are lesser lights within other parties and drawing them in and offering them all sorts of incentives to cross the floor. It would prevent a lot of that. So I think this is a really important suggestion. And one last point, I think something that needs to happen is at some point we need to have a constitutional conference, and not necessarily one event, but we need to have meetings like this where we get people together and we hear from them about what they want in their constitution, like things like this, so that we can sort of mine the best ideas of Albertans and figure out the best way to construct a new way of doing things.
And let's remember, we're not going to bring the Westminster system with us, right? We've proven that sucks. So it'll be something completely different.
One other point. I want to remind everyone, when we get to the point of something like a constitutional conference or constitutional convention, it's very difficult, but we have to be willing to listen to other people. Even though sometimes I get it, it's painful to listen to people who have opinions that are so different than yours. But we have to go into something like that without this preconceived notion that we just cancel or prevent people who disagree with us from speaking. Like what we see right now with almost every conversation that's had across politics, social, whatever. That just can't happen if we're going to have the best outcome.
Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. With all due respect and without prejudice, I'd like to know if this is part of the UCP government first and foremost. I'd like to get some clarity on that. Are you guys part of the UCP?
I am a member, but this has nothing to do with the United Conservative Party.
So you're totally independent.
Yeah, this initiative was actually, if anyone needs to take the blame, it will be me. I did this all on my own accord without any outside influence at all. I invited a bunch of my friends, many of whom you see with me now. Some are not here tonight, but this was an individual Albertans initiative.
That's a great answer. With all due respect, I'd like to speak on a couple of things. It took me, as a Métis, 167 years to get my recognition from Canada. So in the event you became a government, how would that affect our fundamental rights nowadays? How would you deal with that?
All I can tell you is what I would do. I would make sure that every human being in the new nation of Alberta was treated equally, without discrimination, without, subjugation, anything, all equal. And none of this, very similar to what Leighton said, I fundamentally disagree with the idea that we should have things in our society separated based on our ancestry. You and I, sir, we bleed the same color, right? We might look different on the outside, but we want the same things. We, mostly, we want to be free, we want to prosper, we want to see our family do well, all those types of things. And I want to go there with you together. I don't want to have any of the division that we see currently in our society based on any of those things. One human race pursuing freedom and prosperity together, period.
Sir,
That's a great answer, but the fundamental parts, it ain't going to happen. You know that as well. If you became a government, there's going to be all kinds of conflict. How are you going to purport to deal with all the legalities to move this independence forward?
Yeah, that's a really big job, and that's a hard question to answer. It's a really good question. I have a question for you, though, sir. You and I were talking, and you were telling me that you reject what you were taught at residential school or when you were a kid about Christianity. So you reject Christianity. So, but is it true that you are connected with with the Creator? Do you acknowledge a Creator?
I do believe in the Creator. There's one Creator for all living human beings.
Okay, so we agree there. Awesome. So I want to ask you a question. So do you think that the Creator that you believe in sees the Indian as more important, or the Métis more important than the white man? Do you believe your Creator sees us that way? Or do you think he sees us all as being equal?
Well, according to the Creator, everyone is equal. However, those fundamental rights were given to us Indigenous people that were in Canada, North America first.
Right.
And what I guess really bothers me, a lot of my people back then, they used the Bible thumpers to get to them. That's what bothered me mostly, and slaughtered our Indigenous folks.
Yeah. I understand.
And I don't support, even a lot of Indian and Métis leaders because of the corruption that's brought on by the federal and the provincial governments that push that agenda, while the Métis and the Indian peoples are starving.
Okay, just one further question, though, I want to ask you. So those fundamental rights that you talk about, where do those come from? Does those come from the Creator?
Well, I don't know. Like I said, I believe in the Creator, but as Indigenous people, we shared and we got screwed out of our recognition and out of our rights. The GDP is supposed to be 51% to Indigenous people. And this is not you guys particularly, this is creating a lot of hardship between the white folks and the Indians right now, the separation, because the white folks are fighting with the Indians, the Indians are fighting with it's happening, there's division more, and I respect that we need a better Alberta.
We agree on that. But, sir, you didn't answer my question. I asked you where these fundamental rights came from. Did they come from the Creator?
They didn't come from the Creator because as Indians, we weren't, the Bible, there was no such thing as a Bible over here in North America.
But if they don't come
that was brought by the Europeans.
Right. But if they don't come to the Creator, they're not rights, are they?
They're not right, but fundamentally speaking, it's a reality.
Right. They're
right?
What they are is they're state privileges that are given to some people and not to other people on the basis of race. That's discrimination, and that's not something that your Creator would do, is it?
We wouldn't do that. Equalities for everybody, so it's equity. However, that don't play out on any government, whether it's UCP, NDP, federal. It's all the same bureaucrats pushing that agenda and writing the policies, and it's hurting all Canadians.
Yeah, but what if we did it? What if we did it better, though, sir? We could try, right? We could try to do it better.
We could try, we can work together. I'm all for a better
Yeah.
Alberta and a better Canada for everybody, whether
Awesome.
you're white, black.
Awesome. I agree with you. Thank you, sir. Great question.
And maybe guys like Lauren should sit on, if this ever comes to fruition, we should have people here like him sitting and negotiating and giving ideas to make this thing happen.
And let me add one more thing here. I agree with you, brother, because if anybody in the name of religion did something that was offensive, detrimental, put you down, hurt, all in the name of God, that's not God. Because God is all about free will. And he will not force you or me to do anything, so.
Hello. My question is, this new Alberta, country of Alberta we're going to have, we're going to need a new constitution, we're going to need new laws, we're going to need new stuff that's going to block corruption, that's going to hold back what we're going through now in Canada. Now, where are we going to get those laws from? Where are we going to get our, this is wrong and this is right? You can't do this, you can only do that. Where are we going to, what are we going to pattern this country after?
That starts with you. That comes from us. We decide. The Constitution lays out the foundation of the things that, how our government is going to work, our foundational law, those types of things, and it will outline how we create new laws as well. So then through the democratic process, we would elect, presumably, this is my idea, my opinion, we would elect legislators, lawmakers, to go and make laws on our behalf, much like we do right now, but with a foundational law, a constitution, that makes them do it differently, to our benefit, right? Swearing allegiance to us, not to the crown, those types of things. Making it so that the government can't declare that your speech is hate or anything like that, because it's your speech and it should be free. So it's a process that everyone has to participate in, and we have to get away from the idea that somebody else is going to do that for us, and we have to look in the mirror and be like, oh yeah, this is the guy, this is the girl that's going to make sure this gets done right in the future. That's how we do it. But I do have a quick question for you. Where did you get that fantastic hat, and how do I get one?
It took me a long time to get it. I looked for it.
Thank you.
Just one thing. Is this new country going to respect the Ten Commandments?
Well, that hopefully it would, because I think it would need to do that to be a good country. But what I'd ask you to think about, and everybody here, is everybody knows what a renovation, right, is, right? So if you renovate your house or you renovate something, what do? The term renovate means to make new. But if you're renovating, what you're going to do is you're going to get rid of the parts that need to be gone, and you're going to put something else in there that's newer and better, right? And so this Independence Project is kind of like that. It's an opportunity to take the best of what we know, what we've had, and to replace the parts that are bad, for example, like the Westminster system, with something new and better, right? And so that's kind of gets at the essence of the project. So yeah, your question is a really important one. Thanks very much.
And it goes back, yeah, go ahead. It does go back to the values. That is absolutely foundational in my opinion. If we want good values, and again, I say it don't matter whether you know God or not, or believe he's even there or not. If you like respect, if you like honesty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, those are the 10 Commandments. They came from the Creator.
Two questions here real quick. All the myths about being landlocked, and also how many days left to sign the petition?
I believe, so just to be clear, these events that we do have absolutely nothing to do with the petition that's in progress currently. That's a completely different thing. I am aware that the petition will probably end around April 1st or something like that. But if you want information on those things, you're going to have to reach out to that group, different group. And what was the second part? Landlocked. Landlocked's actually my favorite argument against Alberta independence. Are we landlocked right now? Yes. We are.
Who did it?
Who did it?
Ottawa.
So the idea of Confederation is that we're supposed to be able to work together to prosper and, you know, do things like get our resources to Tidewater. That would be probably a good benefit of working together as a Confederation. It's not working. It's not working at all. We're landlocked right now, and the reason why we have so much trouble and so much issue moving our resources to Tidewater so we can trade on the international markets is because of the policies that we're governed by. It's because of a federal government that seems to refuse to allow Alberta to become the economic powerhouse it should be, right? It's not because of our geographical location that we can't build another pipeline. It's because of red tape and regulation. As an independent Alberta, we, for the first time in our history, would have the power to negotiate those things. We would have leverage to do so. And there is this misconception that trade would just immediately end on day one of independence. Nobody would trade with anybody. Everyone's going to be mad. I call complete hogwash on that. Trade is economically mutually beneficial for both parties. That's the reality. So there's no reason why anybody would not trade anymore. But all of a sudden, Alberta gains this ability to have talks like the grown-ups in the room, right? We get a seat at the table. We say, hey, we want to move our oil to pipeline. David Eby says, well, no, you can't because of this. And we say, well, we already are. You know, we're supplying the Vancouver International Airport with all of the refinery with all of the crude stock to make the jet fuel. So what is it? Or do you want oil or not? Because if you don't want it, then I guess we've got to turn it off. And I'm not saying that's something we should do, but it's just an example of a conversation that could be had. And same with going the other way. Ontario, they want their goods to come from the Port of Vancouver, right? They move billions of dollars of stuff through their year. Well, it's got to come through Alberta. It's convenient for them to go through Alberta. There's some leverage we have to negotiate trade deals. Day one of Alberta independence, we immediately free ourselves from the shackles of being policy locked. And the landlocked argument, it's a fantastic one to share with your friends and your family who might oppose this idea. Because of that, it's the simplest and most reasonably explained reason why Alberta must be independent.
Jack Boucher. This question for me is for Mr. Grey. I thought you kind of talked pretty hard-handed. I'm a stroke survivor, so I'm going to be a little slow on my speaking. You came in pretty hard, you know, and if you're going to be the spokesperson for the group, I think you got to knock it down a little bit on that, because you're here, you're representing the new republic. You know, I'm sure they're having the same conversation in Iraq with those kind of thoughts. So I think you got to knock it down a bit. I know you came in here with a strong feeling for what you let me speak, please, sir.
No, sir. Just asking. Is there a question coming?
Yes.
Okay.
So you talked about 1%, about the indigenous population. I'm in one of that percentage, but there's fringe groups that are also in the province that here in Smoky Lake, we have the Hutterite population. They have more people in the province of Alberta. In Plamondon, we have the White Russians. They all come in from Oregon. So you're talking to those people. Edmonton, we have, or even here in Smoky Lake, we have a lot of Filipinos that have come and other indigenous or other groups. So you got to be careful how you speak. I know it's in your heart, but it's not in our heart to really hear that kind of stuff. And what I was happy that it didn't go to
Still waiting for the question, sir.
It didn't go. I'm glad it didn't go to fisticuffs. I'm happy for that, because that's not what we want to do for a new republic. Okay. So my question is, these little fringe groups, how are we going to deal with those kind of people?
Are you talking about like the White Russians and the Hutterites and people like that?
Fringe groups. You talked about 1%.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with those? I know they're all going to vote,
But they
when
wouldn't
they
be
have a
part of.
chance.
They wouldn't be part of the 1% that I was speaking of, and I don't see White Russians and Hutterites going off to see the king to try and block the referendum, which is essentially trying to block a democratic process. But to answer your question about, you know, Hutterites, White Russians, the Amish, all those people are Albertans, and so they will have a say. They'll have an opportunity. But the Alberta that I envision, that I think most people envision, is one that is free and that would respect ethnic differences. And so those people would be able to continue to live. They like to live, I guess, what you would call a true colonial lifestyle, where they have their own societies. They live separately and they relate to everyone else in their own ways. But their ability to do that would be protected. So they would have the right to continue living in the way that they traditionally have. That's what I think would happen in a free and independent Alberta. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Okay.
And the other thing too is, because of the Constitution the way it is, so I kind of had it written down in but I forgot it at home. So this is the Constitution the way it is now. If you guys could read it, it's small. So this is the way it is we are right now. Am I correct?
Are you talking about
Correct.
section?
Just say yes. So now on this side here, there's nothing written. So how do we go from this, under that regime that we're under, to go to this? What is the time frame that we're talking about? We got the October stuff. What happens after that? If there's a yes, what's the time frame?
Next steps?
Yes, thank you.
So the next steps would be what? If it's a yes to separate, what would the next steps be?
Well, according to the Clarity Act, that triggers negotiations with the federal government. And the wording of the Clarity Act says that negotiations may result in secession, which also means may not. I have a feeling that the federal government and probably some other provinces don't want to play nice when the will of Albertans suggests that or demands that we want to be sovereign. They're not going to play nice. That's why I say I would like to see a very large margin. The bigger our margin of success when the will of the people speaks, the shorter the timeline to us becoming an independent nation. And it doesn't have to be all that long. There's people that tell you, oh, it's going to be 5 years, 10 years because everyone has to agree. No, they don't. The only people that have to agree are you Albertans, the people whose future is going to be impacted this. That's it. There's no constitutional amendment required, at least on our part, because as an independence-minded Albertan, I reject and I do not consent. I don't want to consent to be governed with that Constitution. I want us to write our own. So what they do with the Constitution after that is irrelevant to me. I also want to point out, because we get this question all the time, and the question goes something like, well, who's planning? There's all these things that have to be done. There are some very, very brilliant minds working on these things, writing papers, discussing how the transition would go. How are we going to go from an Canada Revenue Agency to an Alberta Revenue Agency? How are we going to go from Federal Department of Immigration to Alberta Immigration? They're doing that work so that when the time comes and when the demand is there, when the will of the people is spoken, we can simply hand the administrative government of the day a book and we could say, this is what you need to do. And we get to work. And that shortens the timeline from years to months. But it depends on how much work we do and how loud that will is when the will speaks for Alberta.
Plus, I've heard we'd be wealthy enough, we wouldn't need any personal income tax. So why would we need an Alberta Revenue Agency? Right?
Sir, I like the way you think. In my opinion, taxing a man or a woman on the value they create from expending the time they have on this planet is immoral, and it should never happen. So I look forward to the day when we can remedy that.
After all, it came in 1917. We survived without it before then. Let's get rid of it.
Hi, guys. My question to everybody here, including the panel up here, is how many people here really realize what freedom looks like? How many people have been oppressed? How many people have sat in this room and said, geez, that government just screwed me so hard, I'm going to lose everything? How many? Come on, put your hands up. My question is, when we go to have a free Alberta, who's going to do it for us? Who? Are you going to do it? Am I going to do it? Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it, Chris?
Yes, sir.
How about you, Les?
Harvey, 100%. 100%, I'm there.
See, this is the thing. Nobody's coming to save us. We have to save us. So as soon as we realize that, we're going to be good. And my question is, think about that. Do you know what freedom is? I want you to think about it. I don't want you to answer me. I want you to think about that. What's freedom? Remember when you were a kid? Remember when you were a kid? I remember when I was a kid, and it's sure a hell of a lot freer now. You know, I watched Chris struggle because the government was tyrannical on him for nothing. Because he wanted to run his business and stay afloat and protect his family and feed them. I watched that. I watched the Native people. I watched them close up their reserves, and they were made to be afraid by a government that was tyrannical. I never had the shot. I'm alive. You know, I look at all you people here. We're going to save us. We're going to do it. My question is, do you know what freedom looks like? Think about that. That's it.
Thank you.
Everybody knows who I am here. My 38-year-old daughter with 3 grandchildren got cancer because she wanted to teach. Thank God she lived. Thank God she lived. But that's not freedom. Thank God she lived.
Again, with all due respect, without prejudice, you made mention that there's only 1% of Indigenous people in Canada or in Alberta. Now, I kind of think, are you going to include this 1% or you don't care one way or another? Because that's not much of a, 1% of votes, is what I'm saying. And another thing, you speak about the Bible. You're fulfilling some of the scriptures in the Bible when they speak on nations will fight against nations, and that's just exactly what's happening now.
To answer your question about whether or not I care, yes, I do. I 100% care. I'm watching this conversation occur around me, and I took a lot of time to dig into some of this stuff, and I wrote an article. I wrote a blog about this, and the blog title is Why an Independent Alberta Will Benefit First Nations People Most. And I really dug into that. I would encourage you to read it, whistlestoptruckstop.ca. It's on my business card at the back under blog. But the idea that because a group is, thank you. Because the idea that because a group is smaller than another group, that the larger group doesn't care, that doesn't work for me. I'm a Bible-believing Christian, and my God commands me to love my neighbor as I love myself, period. It doesn't say depending on where they live or where they came from or anything like that. It says that I'm to love my neighbor. So as I'm contemplating the idea of an independent Alberta, I'm thinking about those things as well. I might come off as, standoffish or crass at sometimes because my emotions tend to get the better of me. I'm Irish. I apologize. I'm also Russian. Don't tell the Ukrainians. But when you really stop and take a breath and you think about it, this isn't about one group of people or another. This is about collectively Albertans deciding that we want to change the structure of governance that governs us and give everybody a path forward to freedom and prosperity, unlike has ever occurred before. So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, I absolutely care.
And maybe some way to resolving this. Lauren, you're brave. invite these gentlemen up to Buffalo Lake, and ladies, invite them to Buffalo Lake, same as we have them here, to give their presentation, and people can field the questions. We'll provide security, promise. But maybe that's part of closing that communication gap, getting facts, getting information to people. Maybe you got to do that, Lauren.
I would
be
be
a
happy
leader.
to
Maybe
do
you
that.
got to do that.
I worked security for them one time. Yeah. Anyways, with all due respect, I respect the fact that you're trying to push forward on independence. I respect that. And no hard feelings. I love things a little rough. It's all good.
Well, let me real quick answer your comment about nations fighting against nations. That's what happens when God ain't in the picture. Just saying.
It's all good. So, I follow along with these politics here, and I like to do things that are different. I like to be, I've always been thought of as the salmon swimming upstream against the tide. So I am a homeschooling mom of 4 because I don't like the school system. Yeah. I do. I'm getting to it. Yeah, that's. Oh no, I do. I got lots of questions. So I want to live in an Alberta where we have that freedom, and we don't have an overreaching government coming in and saying, no, this is going to be illegal. We're going to take it down. We're going to start arresting people. We're going to arrest the homeschool boards. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to make it. If you don't recall, I'll remind you that when the NDP government was in, they actually for 3 weeks took away the right to homeschool, and everybody was without a school board and actually breaking the law if they homeschooled their children. That's what they did to us. Yeah, but still, you know what? It could happen again. And so I would like to see a government that is pared down. A government of civil servants, ones that are actually there for the people and not for lining their own pockets, because it happens, not ones where it's this governmental gravy train, because that stinks, and that's where all of our money goes to. So in this new independent republic of Alberta, how can we be assured that we are going to actually have what we are desiring to attain, instead of just a copycat? Here's what we got right now. Let's Control C and put it over here. Control V. Let's not have that. So how can we do that and actually make it something that we can be proud of, and not something that we're like, well, why the heck did we do that?
Do you remember what I said, folks? What's the opportunity we have? What are we going to create? Constitution. A constitution. That's how you do that. One of the things that I've suggested, and it would I would be giddy if this was in our new constitution, was some sort of enshrinement around a Department of Governmental Efficiency, that every year or 2 years or whatever we decide, the public got full transparency of every dollar spent. You know, that would certainly limit and remove and almost make impossible the corruption we see right now. But it's all based on the Constitution.
Just if I can add to that, my wife and I have 11 children, and we homeschool them. We've homeschooled for over 30 years. So we very strongly believe in that. And so the Constitution can have a very strong protections for parental rights. You know, over time, like we've had parental rights historically, and they're kind of decreasing over time through different government policies and things like that. But we can put a very strong guarantee of parental rights right in the Constitution, so that the right to homeschool could never be removed by a government.
I actually worked on a project for almost 2 years on a new Bill of Rights for Alberta, and we met several times with members of government, and it contained a lot of the protections that you talk about. Unfortunately, the Bill of Rights that we got from the government bears no resemblance to the work that we did on that project through the Black Hats. But you know, as Michael says, there are ways to to protect those things and ensure that we have a good government. But it's all about, having a strong foundation. And you're right. You're absolutely right. You make a tremendous point, and that is that, we could be the richest country in the world, but that wouldn't make us good. The Roman Empire was very rich. They were very evil, and it took Christ to civilize it, right? So.
One other thought I just wanted to bring up too is something that I think that we need to be protected against is what's going on right now. The one party, this person is going over to this person, and this person's going over here. They're getting this incentive, that incentive, because he's trying to stack the deck, and that's corruption. And I actually don't think I think that should be illegal. I think there should be immediate by-elections and stuff like that. You don't get to change, because how do your people know? You're fired. You are fired. And so we need to have those checks and balances in place. Now, not unreasonable ones. We can't be like recalling everybody just because they make one little mistake and somebody's annoyed. But, we need to actually have recourse on this so that we don't have these types of problems.
I'll tell you how we can do it. You need to be there in the room and advocating to make sure that if someone wants to cross the floor to another party, that there's a by-election, and that's in the Constitution.
Well, I can do that.
Yeah.
So the thing to remember as we're building this new country is that we're so used to politicians telling us how it's going to be, right? So it's a real kind of a gymnastics game in here for the first little while, getting used to the idea of, no, we're actually going to tell the future politicians how it's going to be, not the other way around. So exactly what you're saying, the way to do that, and Chris keeps saying Constitution, that's absolutely correct. That Constitution is going to be the document that governs the Republic of Alberta. The people that create that Constitution are the people. The people create the Constitution. That's us, right? So there's engagement in that, which means there will be constitutional conventions. We need to show up at those constitutional convention meetings when they come available. Don't wait for everybody else to do the job for us. Don't wait for politicians. The reason that this movement has made it to this point for the first time in this province's history is because we left the politicians out of it. That's why. So we don't bring them back in until the time is right. And that time is not there yet. But the way to do it is to stay engaged. Our level of showing up at the polls sucks. When you look at the percentage of people who go to vote in this province, especially municipally, your own backyard, it's awful. It's abysmal. We need to change that. And until we do, all the changes that we want to bring in aren't going to amount to anything because we are not making sure that those changes remain. So the first one that I want you guys to really pay attention to is that referendum in the fall. If you have never voted in your life, that is not the day to continue that trend. You go. You go and you vote. I don't care who's playing hockey. I don't care if it's your kids playing hockey. You go and you vote. If your neighbor did not go and vote, you pick them up and you say, we're going to go and we're going to vote. And then after you have helped to make history, you're going to go celebrate. And then after that, you're going to wait. For those of us that are in these spots here who can't seem to stay home and quiet about this, we're going to invite you to those constitutional conventions. And don't tell me, oh, I didn't see it, because it's going to be advertised. And you're going to, again, tell your neighbors about it. There's no excuses this time. And you show up at those constitutional conventions and you partake in those conversations. And we decide what our future is going to look like. And the politicians provincially that are in place now know that if they do not follow the will of the people, they're not going to have a job in 2027. That's how this is going to go. Those mandates that we had to go through, that was our dry run, everybody. If we had not stayed quiet and we had not stayed home and we had not complied with what has now been told to us was indeed unconstitutional, Chris would have not gone to jail. We cannot repeat that mistake this time. That's how we prevent everything that you guys are afraid of. We stay engaged and we get the job done together, not the politicians, us.
Okay, we've got one last question here.
My question is probably very practical. I suspect you might not have an answer for it, but I'd be curious what you have to say. Apart from my husband, my work is the most important thing to me, so I just want to talk about what's important to me. I have a private practice. I'm a psychotherapist, full practice. I've had it for 10 years. I work with people all over the world. All over the world. And my regulatory body is located in another province. Its headquarters are actually in BC. And so if Alberta becomes independent, how would that work logistically where I still am engaged in my business that I love and will do until probably the day before I die? And that regulatory body, I need to belong to one. And so what would that look like?
Well, I'll give you my opinion as a burger flipper. This kind of goes along with the idea that nobody gets left behind moving into a new independent Republic of Alberta, or independent Alberta, whatever we choose. It's things like that where you have a regulatory body in another province, or maybe you have, something, maybe you work globally or internationally or whatever. There's certain agreements and contracts that provinces have with each other so that professionals from those provinces can work in the others. Some provinces have agreements with others, some don't. So I would say that it would be prudent during the transition period, before we have a regulatory body here of our own, that we just agree to maintain those relationships and those contracts going forward. So that's to say, it wouldn't mean that we become independent and all of a sudden those things are all gone. It would mean we become independent and we allow those things to continue until we decide collectively, and with you with your peers in that field, you would decide what you want to do. Maybe you want a regulatory body here. Maybe you don't want to have a regulatory body. Maybe your profession wants to just rely on statute law to make sure that you're not harming your patients. Who knows? It's really, the opportunity is to us. But that goes to all of these things, and pension plans, old age security, those types of things. If you're receiving something from the federal government right now, some sort of an entitlement that you rely on, and independent Alberta is not going to just stop all of that. If the federal government, for some reason, and this is my opinion, I'll advocate for this. If the federal government said, screw you Albertans, we're not going to give you old age security anymore because now you live in a different country, the Alberta would have to step up and say, we will shoulder that burden because we don't leave anyone behind. It's an idea that crosses all of those things: pensions, entitlements, regulatory bodies. Anything that you have right now would have to be somehow during the transition period negotiated so that nobody is left behind. I hope that was a...
Okay, we got one quick comment here.
Leighton has something first.
Okay, no, go ahead. It's important to remember with independence that does not necessarily mean that all relationships with Canada are going to come to an end. If you think of the American Revolution, they had an actual revolution. They had a Revolutionary War. But even that didn't sever all relations between the U.S. and Great Britain. So we are, I expect what would happen, what would change is that our relations would be between independent countries. But obviously there would be a lot of these trading relationships and things of that nature we expect would continue. And that's part of the consultation process that's built into the Clarity Act.
Okay, I just want to emphasize something that was brought up by a previous speaker with the rest regarding the problem we have in this country and at the provincial and federal levels with party politics. And I think the biggest problem, even though parties always strive to get that majority, the sad reality is for us as voters and residents of this country and this province, whenever we get strong majorities, we no longer live in a true democracy, we live in elected dictatorships. And while some of those majority governments do make some good decisions, unfortunately all too often we have seen and we continue to see to this day a lot of very bad decisions made by majority governments. So I think one of the founding things that I would like to see in a new Alberta is that we totally do away with party politics. Elect people that we want us to do the job. If they do a good job for us, maybe we'll re-elect them. If we don't, we'll punt them the next election.
And that was spoken about. We covered that. I think we talked about.
I just want to point something out.
Okay.
While I agree with that in principle, it's difficult in application because human beings have this tendency to form factions, right? And the party system, at the very least, you know basically where that person stands. If the reason we have the party system is so those things are identified. If we didn't, I can guarantee you that those people would probably be forming parties behind closed doors that we don't know about, and working together in a clandestine fashion. So that is, I understand the concept of getting rid of parties, but I just want to caution that there is another side of that, and it is a double-edged sword. It's something we ought to really think about.
Right. Okay. How about on behalf of the town of Smoky Lake, a great big hand for these folks and all of their support staff coming all this way on our behalf. On our behalf. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and you haven't seen the last of us.